coming to you at a new video, new channel. What is up? This is Arkada. We're doing a podcast, a new channel here, and this is the first episode, so thank you for joining us. What's up? My name is Mitch. I also have my own channel, Mitch Lozada. You can go ahead and find myself on there. I do current events reviews, pop culture, social political commentary, and I'm here with...
Hi, my name is Rachel Puena. I'm new to Vegas, well, 5 years. I'm actually an English teacher for a junior high. I just ran a race. I ran for Assembly District 21 here in Las Vegas.
Awesome. So again, I'm here having conversations. I love having these talks about what's going on, talking about Filipino culture, talking about things that are relevant and what's going on in our lives. And so essentially Arkada is one of the projects I'm working on. Project Arkada is pretty much Arkada without the B, right? It's Arkada, it is B. The B is what you bring, right? And so essentially we're building an arc of friends, hence Arkada. And you know, it's an idea, a project to pretty much preserve, cultivate, and share Filipino American culture. And you know, again, I think as a part of that, a big part of that is having these conversations. And so one thing that came up was One Down. I'm not sure if you're familiar with One Down.
You're telling me.
I have friends with One Down, so I'm not saying anything bad on them. They do a good job. They're a media company, but I call them the Filipino BuzzFeed, right? And so, you know, and again, that's not necessarily anything bad. I think they do a good job what they do, but what we're gonna go into is one of the topics talking about Independence Day. And this topic, this episode is about Filipino gaslighting. And gaslighting is essentially making you question reality and making you second guess a lot of things, right? And so I feel like this was that very instance. And so we'll take a look at what they posted and kind of have a discussion on it. So I'll put this up on the video, but I put down, and you can read it yourself, but isn't it weird that the Philippines declared independence from Spain on June 12, 1898, and then sold to the United States right after? Are we just celebrating the transfer of ownership from Spain to the US as a result of the Spanish-American War? What was the point of declaring independence from Spain if we had to wait 48 years for the United States to declare independence for us on July 4th, which is their Independence Day? Is the Philippines truly independent if our language, food, surnames, and cultural standards come from Spanish colonization? So what does truly independent Philippines look like? So like real quick before I jump into your thoughts on all of that stuff. Yes, we do have two Independence Days. One is on June 12, 1898, where we declared independence from Spain, and then on July 4th, 1946, where we declared independence from the US. So we celebrate the one from Spain because that's where our flag originated from, like with the red, white, and blue and yellow with the golden sun and the 3 stars. And so we kind of celebrate that one because that's more how the Filipino identity came from. But as an independent nation, how it is today, the 1946 July 4th makes sense, or at least that's what it is. And so before I throw it to you, I thought it was pretty cool that our Independence Day also shares with American stuff, but you know, I can see how we would want to prioritize a different Independence Day, especially if we have ties with the US and we don't want to make it conflate with their Independence Day. So again, what's your initial thoughts on all this?
You know, I remember my parents, well, you know what, let me just tell a little background.
Yeah.
My dad, I don't know whether to believe him or not. I don't know if you guys have the same thing with your dads, but my dad tells a story about how we got our last name. So my last name, my maiden name is Agatep, and that's the most Filipino thing about me. And so, because the other names is Gerardo, Sabio, Dolores, right? They're very Spanish sounding. But I said, so what does Agatep mean? So I don't know if my dad's telling stories, because he loves doing that, telling Philippine stories. So he said that the Spanish were trying to make the Filipinos more organized. And he noticed that when they came to conquer the Philippines, they didn't know, a lot of people didn't have last names. Mm-hmm. They couldn't categorize people. They couldn't name them and say, okay, who are you? And then, so, I don't know, my dad just said, oh, my great, whoever, grandpa was on the roof and he was fixing on the roof, and the roof meant Agatep or something, and he says, oh, I'll come down in a bit and from the Agatep, and like the roofing or something. I was like, does that what our last name means? And then that's where we got the last name. So my understanding was that the Philippines was very disorganized. We are made over 1,000 islands and separate tribes and separate dialects. So I could imagine when the Spaniards came, they were kind of confused because we weren't unified in any way. We didn't have any kind of organization. The provinces, I'm sure we didn't, a lot of people just stayed locally. If you could live off the land, you didn't go out and explore other places, I could imagine, And then the Spaniards came and they wanted to make roadways or whatever they wanted to do and travel within that country. But I could imagine all the native Filipinos are like, why am I going to go to another village when everything I have is right here? So to me, I think when the Spaniards came, from just my brief little explanation from my dad and his funny story was that the Filipinos were very disorganized and they didn't even have like last names and they couldn't trace who was who. So they came around and tried to do a census. And so that was their attempt, and that's how we got our last names and stuff. But like I said, are we going to deny, we were talking about this, are we going to deny our Spanish side? Like I said, the most native thing about me, or Filipino thing about me is Agatep, but the rest is Jurado, Sabio, Dolores, and Fernandez, and, so my Jurado means like judge. So my dad said that we had probably Spanish judges, and that's why we got that name. And so am I going to deny that side of my family? And but what about the Agatep side? And I was telling you, and I told you guys, I had the other side where on the flip side, my great grandma was a headhunter. That was her tribe. They were headhunters. So I'm like, am I the Spanish side or the Filipino tribal side? So it's a combination of both, and I think, and so what I tell to some other students who didn't know what I was, they were like, Filipino, what is that? I said, oh, we're Spanish Asians.
Sure.
And so that's what now everybody, it's circulating. After I said that, everybody starts calling us Spanish Asians, because when you see that last name, except Guamanians, right? Guamanians have Spanish surnames too, so Guamanians would kind of look alike, so I'm just saying. But yeah, so that's how I describe ourselves as Spanish Asians, because basically over 400 years, and we've been colonized longer than any Spanish nation in the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're very, very much so Spanish.
Yeah, I see what they're going at, right? But at the same time, I don't view, and I said it to you earlier, I don't view colonization as a necessarily good and bad thing. You can have that conversation, but I view it more as history. It happened, and then you can't deny the fact without the Spanish, it made the Filipino identity. And it actually, sure, you can always say the Filipinos, real Filipinos back in the Spanish times only referred to Spanish born, but the idea with Jose Rizal was to capture and use that and become the Philippine identity with the native Filipinos, right? And so it's so ingrained with us. I think it's hard to say, it's hard to separate it. And even if you wanted to separate it, right? Like there's going to be Filipino Chinese, there's going to be different Filipino ethnic groups. So there's never going to be one set of Filipino, right? And I think that's also where I want to go with this conversation. And then another point with the colonization, it's during the age of colonization. So if we weren't, I honestly believe I guess, you can make theories, but even if it wasn't for the Spanish, I believe the Dutch or the French or the English are going to colonize the Philippines just as much as they're going to colonize the rest of Southeast Asia. You can say that was a bad thing, but it's what it was of that time, So it was pretty much kind of like a Game of Thrones type of thing. Like everyone was vying for this stuff, and you could say that was a bad thing for the Europeans to do it. But you know what? I can throw it back to the Islam. They were colonizing Northern Africa into India, into Southeast Asia itself. And so one thing that I always also like to point out when they say like, oh, Western civilization and colonization, well, do you put the same energy towards Genghis Khan? Do you put the same energy towards like the Romans, and you're gonna put the same energy towards like the Islamic Caliphate? Like everyone was colonizing each other for centuries. And so I just think it's kind of funny. They always have to bring this idea back into the Spain and Western civilization, because for the more people that I think they always like to criticize Christianity. They always like to criticize Western civilization. So again, I love this conversation. I like that they're bringing this into discussion and everything, but is there anything else you want to add?
You know, if you see, so what is Filipino culture really? If you see that our traditional dresses, very Spanish influence.
Yeah.
So are we going to get rid of that? What are we talking about? So it's kind of the same argument that like Dinesh D'Souza was talking about, how the tribes kept conquering the other tribes, and it's like, so which one are you going to identify with?
Yeah.
Like, in which land are you giving it back to which tribe?
Yeah.
So at the same time, it's like we're so ingrained, like are we going to splice our own DNA and take out the Spanish side? Because it's part of our DNA now.
Yeah.
So can we just?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's a great point. I mean, not everyone is like Igorot, right? No, not everyone is Kalinga. Like my family, my mom's side is from the northern side, and my dad's side is from Visayas. And so, like, how are you gonna say like each, like, okay, so are we all Visayan? Are we all Cebuano now? Like, if you take away the Spanish, again, there was never a central identity, as you were mentioning, because it was all these various groups. And so I think that's also a good point to make. So yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. We can't just cut out that Spanish side of us and then get rid of the, like, I go to the Filipino dances and they always have the sleeves, you know, it's like, that's very Spanish influence. And the, you know, the candle, the dance, fan dance, that's very Spanish.
Yeah, you know, and again, for me, it's more about embracing and looking past this, right? Like, I don't like this conversation because it makes us look like victims. Like, it looks like, oh, we have to talk about colonization. We always have to talk about as like the oppressor and oppressed type of thing, and we're always oppressed. And when, like, it just sounds so like demeaning. Like, I always like to bring this conversation. Like, our families cross an ocean to be here. Like, and for you to complain about like all of this as if it's a bad thing, like, and just I think we should just embrace our heritage and the good and bad. Obviously, we can like look past the bad and grow from it, but obviously remember that it happened and everything. I view it as more of a nuance. Like, it happened, you know, but we can obviously look past it and grow from it and learn from it. And so before you have any, I'll leave it off with something that I actually posted as a last comment, but do you want to add anything before I go in here?
I'm good.
Yeah. So this is actually the comment that I made on the one down. So this is what I wrote. So I said, I'll write this in a religious analogy because I just came from Bible study, and yeah, many of us are Catholic, if not denominational, non-denominational Christian. Again, we're not a monolith, but it's a fair majority, right? Christ is not merely defined by the agony in the garden, scourging the pillar, crowning with thorns, but in the crucifixion. All of those things needed to happen in the fulfillment of salvation. It is in suffering that we find salvation. Likewise, the Filipino story is shaped by colonization, and that affliction, that suffering is a part of us. However, it is in how we overcame that struggle and continue to overcome our adversity that we need to reflect, honor, and celebrate. We are not victims of our circumstances. We are victors of what we have achieved. Embrace the suck, embrace the grace. And then I left it off with a scripture quote from Romans 5:3-5. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and that endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and that hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. And I think, again, with all the things that has made for the Filipino people especially, I think we are godly people, and I think that is something to be treasured, not something to look down upon. So I'll just leave it there for our first episode. I think those were good conversations, and again, I have friends from One Down, so I'm not saying that this was a bad thing. I think they are doing good as far as having a conversation, and it allowed us to have our own conversations, but I just wanted to bring it more on a lighter note, or thinking not as a bad thing, because it felt like it was a bad thing for them to look at Philippine independence as, like I said, like a gaslighting type of thing. So
I gotta go check that out and see what else they say about Philippine independence.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll do more videos and do everything. So again, this is our first episode, so we're gonna evolve as this goes on. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace.